Hey Nora, thank you very much. Okay, cool. So I think we can start. So first of all, thank you all for joining us for today's webinar about JFrog and DevOps one-on-one CICD. Yeah, so first, a little bit about myself. My name is Batel Zohar. I'm part of the developer advocate team in JFrog. Before that, I was an embedded developer, a web developer, and a support engineer in JFrog. And when I was a support engineer in JFrog, I've learned a lot and saw some interesting cases, and I would like to share some of them with you today. I hope you're gonna like it. As you can see in the picture, I have an amazing doggy named Benjo, and yeah, I'm always happy to help, so please do not hesitate to reach out if you need anything. I'm pretty available on emails, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever works for you. And before 6 months, I just adopted another beautiful baby named Sol. I hope you can see her. So here is my crazy doggy. So I'm sorry if you just hear them on the background. I'll try to ask them to be quiet, but I think they're very excited about you, that we have a lot of attendees, and thank you again for joining. So let's start. Yeah, I know you heard a lot about DevOps. I know it sounds pretty complicated and it's not so simple, but today I'll try to make it simple. And I know when you're new to the industry, you encounter a lot of new concepts, right? You heard about a lot of things like CICD and more platform that you need to use, and why we need to work with Git, right? Why it's so important to work as a team. So yeah, this can make it really difficult to get your feet on, and it could be a bit frustrating. So what does DevOps really mean, for my opinion at least? What all of this software, what is all of this jargon? Is DevOps is a methodology or a tool set, like I see here in some questions, where I'll try to answer all of them later. But yeah, I know it could be a bit frustrating and a bit complicated, so I'll try to make it simple. And let's just try to make our life a bit easier, and let's try to talk about the buzzwords that we are hearing a lot. So you will find a lot of documentation that I assume that you all already have the context and you've read about it. And you know, DevOps is not just a jargon or something like that. I think it's more like a culture, right? And I believe that some of you will approve me, and I believe it's more like a culture. So let's try to break down CICD in this webinar. So first of all, what does this even stand for? So for my opinion, the CI stands for continuous integration, and CD stands for continuous delivery or continuous deployment. Yes, they do mean different things, right? Continuous deployment is totally different than continuous delivery, and we'll talk about both of them. And I know it sounds like it's already getting super complicated, but I promise it's not so complicated, and we'll talk about everything in this webinar. I'll try to make it simple. All right, so what does continuous integration mean? Continuous integration means practicing continuous integration, means merging all developers' working code base with the source multiple times a day. Doing this requires a series of automated builds and unit tests to ensure none of the postponed changes cause problems, right? But the result is that bugs or integrations issues are discovered much earlier in the development process. We make sure that we can find a lot of things super quickly and everything is automated. So the ideal is a build that is triggered with every single commit. And actually we're working like that in JFrog. In some of our application, we are creating builds for every commit. So that failures are caught by the developer immediately and corrected, right? If I can see that very quickly, I can just fix it because I know I just make a simple bug or something that just broke my build. And it also forces engineers to write code that's more modular. It's making it easier to support later on. Then let's talk a bit about history, right? Let's try to better understand from where it came from, all of this continuous integration. So continuous integration has been thing since the early 90s. It hasn't always been called that, and some of the implementation has changed. The spirit remains the same. More changes into source in a smaller but more frequent, tested project that still builds and runs those changes, and make sure your engineers are all working on the most recent version of the source, right? We always wanted to work on the recent version, and we try to merge it super quickly. So to do this, you won't end up with a ton of merge conflicts or price problem when it comes time to build. We want to make sure that it's easy, we can just build it. And it was the first proposed by a man named Grady Booch in 1991 with this book, Object-Oriented Analysis and Design with Application. The Booch method advocates for more frequent use of classes and objects in programming in order to simplify designs. His version of continuous integration didn't suggest releasing multiple times a day, right? It's still very, very early, but in 1997, extreme programming became a thing, and built on the Booch method by advocating for releasing multiple times a day, it kind of changed the game. Everything basically just changed. So we have a shorter release lifecycle per programming, extensive code review, unit test and acceptance testing as standard aspects of writing software. All things that make our life easier in the future and ridiculously improve quality. More and more methodologies built on work under producer from Scrum to Kibana, and all with one goal in mind. Make it easier to write clearer, high-quality code and get out the users faster, right? We would always like to deliver our software as soon as possible. Then, in the early days, while we recognized that we needed to releasing more frequently, we didn't really have tools to make that easier. We didn't get first open source tool to make continuous integration easier to achieve unit until 2001. With the release of cruise control, it looks pretty primitive now, but all the time it was really amazing and very new. So the concept has been around for a long time, but it's been changing the whole time. And we haven't really gotten good and explained it, right? We always heard that it's important and continuous integration, it's something that we have to have in our organization, but nobody really explained it why and when it started. Now, as I said before that, we have continuous delivery and we have continuous deployment, and let's talk a bit about the difference between them. So continuous delivery means what it says on the box, right? You have exactly what it says and your software updates are continuously delivered. It's concrete with continuous integration. This means that you should have the ability to deploy a new build very rapidly because you've automated some quality gates that would otherwise need to be performed manually, like, let's say, building data and testing. So we trust our software. We are sure that we already tested it and the build is working as expected. So we can just, deliver it very, very quickly to the user end, to our engineers. That reduction in manual labor means that you get to release a bunch of small changes, right? We want to, rather than you have a huge update every couple of months, think about it. Before a few years, we just created a huge version with tons of features that can actually cross too many platforms and just make very horrible way to update our software. So you can also be more confident that your release isn't going to break when you deploy it to your user, right? You're just creating very, very small updates that you can trust them, and then it's much easier to deliver it. Now let's talk a bit about continuous deployment, right? It's similar, but it goes one step further. Deployment is automated too. In continuous delivery, there is still a manual quality gate involved before the update is out to the wild, right? You are kind of just providing it in our website so everyone can update and just download the latest version. But when we're talking about continuous deployment, it's automated already and it's out to the wild. So this is kind of, a step for some that requires a lot of trust in your system. I'm not a huge fan of it. I have some issues and I don't like that my phone just updates automatically while I don't want, and then I have tons of fun. But for the modern DevOps pipeline, what we may want to achieve in the future is kind of efficient and possible. Humans' involvement has to be removed wherever it's possible. I think it's a lot, but we're really, really bad in repetitive tasks, right? We're humans, and humans make mistakes, and we get bored, and we get distracted, and we're slow, right? It's not like just running a script to do that for me. So I believe that whenever we are writing the good code and test, and we automated everything, we can make sure that we can accept it absolutely, and we are not going to deploy a bad update eventually, because human involved in clicking the big green button is not right. It's not so bad. So one matter is how quickly you can respond to the incorrect bad updates, both continuous deployment and continuous delivery, and it helps us with that. So let's wait a second. So what's CICD? What does it get to me? And let's go a bit for the high level. CICD is just the term for the marriage of this concept, right? It is an important part of DevOps, since automation and efficiency is what we're all about, and one doesn't really work context of DevOps without the other. It's kind of together. And implementing CI/CD practices gets your faster, more reliable release cycle. You can add a new feature or bug fixes way very, very fast, since you know your engineers are all working from most recent source, and you know there are unit and integration tests, and you know your build, right? You can trust your build. You have kind of a quality gate, and you know that you just check everything and you can trust it. There aren't a bunch of manual steps involved for the engineers or QA or whoever else you may want to merge in quality gates. Instead of somebody pushes codes or reopens a pull request, and those steps are taken care of by your CI/CD tooling. So to start, you need a CI/CD tool. This is what's going to automate a bunch of manual processes for you. It does take some time to set up the start of new project, but personally, I'm a flavor of lazy, where I'm willing to spend extra time of beginning to make sure I don't have to do a bunch of repetitive manual tasks every single time. I push a code later on. The specification and configuration of any of those tools varies, so check the documentation to your choose tool, but broadly, they are all work in the same way. So you said something as a trigger, right? We're always triggering something in our code, like telling it to watch your source repository for commit or merge or any change on your source repository. You then configure a series of steps, each with pass or fail condition, like telling it how to run your unit tests, build scan, or vulnerabilities, or deploy your application. With a sufficiently detailed CI/CD pipeline, you don't have to do anything but write code and push it. The system handles everything else for you. Right? Think about it. I'm a developer. I just want to develop my application. I don't want to create the scanning or to run the build every time. I'm just doing it once and it's automatically. The specifics of how two steps are defined kind of varies from tool to tool. But usually there is some kind of configuration file that defines these steps for you, frequently in format called YAML, most of them using YAML, and have a web interface that gives you the graphical overview of what your steps look like. We have logging output, so you can exactly what's going on, when, and how, and it's pretty easy, right? It's great. Now we know that CI/CD, so there's what goes into a good update and why it's important. If you are around my age, around 28, almost, and you probably remember how much drama used to be involved in software updates. They were large, they were frequent, they weren't frequent actually, and they took a lot of time to apply. The changelogs were huge, and there was a fairly significant chance that new version would be buggy in some way, right? Something will break. And it was just generally an inconvenience experience. And let's talk a bit about the past. In a lot of situations, it wasn't even possible just download an update. The manufacturer would have to provide you with an update via physical media, whatever, like a floppy disk or a CD-ROM or just a USB drive later on. Some things do still work this way, but it's really rare. Outside a handful of industries, most of the industries today just send you an update and you can easily upgrade it very, very quickly. You don't need to provide someone to someone physically. And it's a huge, huge change, right? It's much, much easier today. Now, let's talk a bit about fonts, right? Fonts have suffered similar problem. Let's talk a bit about the 90s, and there wasn't really a way to update software, right? To get like Snake. Let's talk a bit about Snake. I actually have a crazy story about it. When I was a kid, I told my mom that I want more levels. I want a new update for my Snake game because I finished everything. I don't know, it was like a score or something that I get. And I really, really wanted to continue playing Snake. It was so fun. I really loved it. So my mom told me, all right, just write a letter. We will send it. I think it was Sonny or whatever. I don't remember the font type. I'm sorry. But it was really nice girl. I wrote a letter. I tried to explain why it's so important to me to have another level. And eventually, after a few months, she just bought me a new phone. So it's nice. I got a new game, and it's really fun. But again, today, phones got smarter, right? Updates still required. You know, sometimes we need to plug the phone to the cloud storage or just add it to the charger or something like that. But before that, there wasn't data, right? We can't transfer stuff. And today, it's just something that we don't even think about. Sometimes we just apply the update automatically on our phone. We don't know what exactly the version that we are using. And sometimes we just don't care about it, right? It's working, it's cool. I have all the new latest features, so I don't even care about it. And again, sometimes, of course, there is some setup time, but in most of the time, it's pretty smoothly. It's don't take too much, and it's just running whenever we have Wi-Fi or something like that. So we've gotten much, much better at this over the time, in large part due to the privileges of DevOps and in particular CICD, but we're still not perfect. Let's look at some real-world example of situation where CICD could have prevented a serious problem. All right, so the consumer angel. Most modern cars are all full of computers. Those computers need updates. Most of them can't be updated over air and need to be taken into a service center or dealership if there is a problem with the software. That's a different problem and the topic and different talk, but let's say that lack of over-the-air. Update causes a lot of expensive problem for car manufacturers. Teslas are one of the few cars in the world that can receive over-the-air updates, but they aren't quite perfect. So let's talk a bit about Tesla. You may have heard about the phantom braking, right? I guess that some of you heard about it. So I'll see the chat later on and see if you heard about it. But if not, it's a problem with Tesla Autopilot, where conditions are good and the road is clear, no visible any obstruction, but the autopilot slams on the brakes. No reason, everything is clear. It looks pretty cool. But again, we're getting some braking. Kind of annoying and probably scary, maybe even a bit dangerous, and it took a while to fix it, and not because it was difficult to track down, because you know why? You remember that I told you about a bunch of very, very large updates? So that's what happened in Tesla, actually. So because of the chess game, while Tesla certainly has CICD system in place, they weren't using a design pattern we call continuous updates. Instead, they released update in batches where multiple features and fixes are included in the same update. So think about a very large update. The fix for the phantom braking issue was rolled with a larger update that added chess game to the car, which is nice. I love to play chess, but is the chess game more important than fixing an issue with car brakes? Well, it kind of depends. Really, if you don't have the autopilot in your Tesla, why you should care about it? You want to play a quick game while you are charging your car, right? You just want to try new games and play with it a bit. But if you do have the autopilot package, you probably care a little less about the chess game. That's why continuous updates could have prevented this problem. Instead of releasing fixes and features as they are ready, you have features that are important to one of the users waiting on a feature that's irrelevant to them, but important to an entirely separate set of users. It's a lose-lose situation that sufficiently advanced CI/CD pipelines could have prevented. So as you can see here, it's actually from the documentation on something. So this release contains minor important and bug fixes. Well, it was with the same update that added the chess game. Now let's talk a bit about money. I remember that we have actually a question about money and how much it's expensive to have DevOps or something like that. So not updating frequently and automatically can actually be really, really expensive. Sometimes even very, very fatally. So let's take another case. Maybe some of you heard about Knight Capital. So in 2012, a bad software update caused a major stock market disruption and tanked the value of a company called Knight Capital. They were a trading firm that specialized in automated transaction on the New York Stock Exchange, and one day it all came crashing down. You see, they weren't automating their updates or their deployments, and they weren't updating frequently. Remember, humans are bad in repetitive tasks, right? We said it's very, very hard to do the same task again and again, and we are humans, we make mistakes, and it's totally fine. So we are especially bad at them when we don't get a lot of practice, right? Think about it, that you're doing something in the first time. It's much harder than doing it again and again. So two things contributed to this disaster that came. So when the engineer was updating the 8th server responsible for handling those automated trades, he forgot one. So only 7 of the 8 servers had new software. They also used an API endpoint, and they're changing the behavior in the new version. So you can probably see where it's headed, right? People just run through the old API, change the transaction, everything just get a huge messy because we forget just one server. One simple update for a server like they did with other 7 servers, and everything just crashed. All right, so we burned a lot of money, and when it went into production, it was chaos. Request to the old, as I said before, request to the old server running the old API endpoint, rigged over the share prices of 148 companies. Engineer responded by taking the 7 update machine offline to roll back the software, and that increasing the load of one of the machine that was never updated to begin with. You remember the one server that we forgot to update? And there was no logging, no monitoring, and no alerts. Nobody knows about it, kind of. So they had to sit there desperately trying to figure out what's happening, losing money in minutes, over minutes, just losing. Think about it, like you're seeing that your money just goes down. Wow, it's really sad. In the 45 minutes this bad update was live, Knight Capital lost 440 million and ultimately went out of business as a result, of course, very quickly. So it was very tragic and preventable, I think. Their servers were all being updated manually, but humans get tired and bored and distracted. Or maybe someone is having a bad day, right? Everyone have a bad day or bad hair day, or everything that could happen, and they just aren't working on 100%. It's normal. It's really, really normal, and we are humans, but if the process had been automated, it may not have never happened. Now, I know that you love security, so let's talk a bit about the security engine, right? For me, the most compelling argument in favor of spending time and effort on CI/CD is security. CI/CD enable you to update your software much more quickly, which translates to being vulnerable to known issues, being able to react more quickly if breach does occur. So this story, most of you are probably familiar, if it might not be aware of the cause, but let's talk a bit about Equifax. So in September 2017, Equifax announced that a serious breach had occurred between May and July that year. That means address, birthday, driver's license numbers, and social security numbers of a short of 149 million Americans had been stolen. The hackers had exploded. We have the number, it's CV 2017 something, a vulnerability in very commonly used web framework called Apache Struts. So if you're building some web servers, I guess that you heard about it, and it's pretty common dependency. So talking about how it actually works is out of scope, right? It could be a very, very long webinar if we will talk about it. But the gist is that it would allow an attacker to remotely execute commands with whatever authority this web server had. So basically, when using Struts, this version, it was pretty easy just to get the same authority and just hack everything in the organization. This wasn't a vulnerability that flew under the radar, right? Everyone heard about it. Even before, on a breach with a different CV, was news in a security world. It's something that people heard about it. It was classed as critical vulnerability, something that absolutely has been taken seriously and corrected immediately. The vulnerability was disclosed and published in March, months before Equifax was be breached. So why it took so long, right? Once they discovered the breach, it took them 2 full months to find the upgrade all usage of vulnerable version of Struts, which is crazy. Two months just to change the version of this dependency. Lawsuits were filed, resulting in a 575 million settlement with FTC, as well payments and credit monitoring for those affected, right? Everyone was very, very stressed about it. Unfortunately for us, the number of people affected by the breach was large that after eternity fees, many people got nothing but lifetime of being paranoid about their credit. You know, whenever you're just breaching any credit card, it's pretty scary, right? Someone will use my data, someone will take some of this leak. It's scary. This was caused by a lack of vulnerability scanning. You remember that in the beginning I showed you how I think that the CICD should look like. So they didn't have any vulnerability scanning, and it's just an ability to update repeatedly, right? So if we have vulnerability scanning, we can trust our software. We have a quality gate that we believe on, and we can say that we can just easily upgrade it. We trust our software, we are fine. But in that case, it was super scary. We didn't have it, and they lost a lot of money. So let's take a tour. So hopefully by now I've explained what is CICD and its convenience to you, that it's worth the effort. Now I'll take you to a tour of some tooling. Let's go and have a look at the CICD system in action, as well as config file that define steps for a freemium solution. Like we have free usage and it's limited generally, but it's fine for any personal project that you have or small stuff that you are just easily creating. You can easily use like JFrog pipelines that is available by your free tier account that I can send you a link so you can just easily register without credit card, without nothing, and just try your first CICD. And this is what I'll just use and show you in a few minutes. It's pretty simple to set up and it's available for almost any project that you would like to host. And we can also use the JFrog CLI, which is a really nice command line tool that helps you to manage your platform very easily. So just a second, give me a minute and I'll share my screen. All right, so I promise to make it very, very quick. I'll just take 5 minutes of your time. Here's my JFrog platform. I can see my packages, and here's the pipeline that I talked about. So here is my pipeline. And let's take one of the demo Maven build that I just created here. So we can see here my build, my step that just ran. Let's take one of them. Here you can see that the exact step that's run and how long it took to run it. So let's take one of them. You see, very, very important is an audit log that I can see which step exactly render. So here you can see that I'm using the JFrog CLI. So you can see the version that it's running. And in that case, I'm also configuring Artifactory to work against it. And here's my build. I have the configuration, so you can see that I created a Maven config, and the build config created successfully. Then I can see my environment variable that I'm adding here. And here I'm just creating the build, collecting the environment variable for my demo. And here I have some integrations, so I deleted Artifactory, and I don't need a container after it's run, right? I want to create my step, run my build, and then you can just remove the container. Now let's move to the second step, to the publish build. So here I can see that I'm booting a new container, then I have the exact step that's running, and I'm using Artifactory as I said before, and I'm writing output right here, I'm saving everything, and then you can see your build information in your Artifactory, which is very cool. And let's talk a bit about build info and why it's so important. So build info provides you the ability to see everything that's related to your build. Let's take bit number 9 that's related to my demo Maven. So here's the artifact that I just created. You see I created a few artifacts and some jars. So if I'm clicking on it, I can see the exact file location, and I can even click here to go to the tree location and see it on my Artifactory.
Batel, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think you're breaking up a bit. Maybe you can just try.
Sure. So I'll just repeat.
Maybe just try refreshing your page, and I think we should be good.
Sure. So I'm trying to refresh it. Let me know when you see it, please.
Our apologies for the small technical issue, everyone. We'll try to fix it quickly.
Yeah, I'm sorry for the internet issues. I'll try to fix it very quickly. Stop sharing and I'll try again.
Batel is just trying to log in again, everyone. Again, apologies for the small issue. This happens during live webinars. So please just give us a minute or two and we'll fix this. Thank you. While we wait for Batel, I just want to mention again, the recording will be, I see a lot of you asked this question, if the slides and the recording will be shared, and they will be shared with everyone tomorrow. So you will be able to review the session and take a look at the slides. Batel, can you hear us well?
Yeah. Yes,
okay,
I
perfect.
can hear you.
Is
that okay now? Awesome.
Yeah, that's much better.
So sorry, guys. I'm super sorry for my internet issues. Let's try to make the demo again. And just a sec, I'll share my screen. I hope everyone can see that right now. Let's check the chat. All right, so let's go back for the build very, very quickly. I see here how long this webinar. I guess we have around 5-10 minutes and we're finished, right?
Yes, correct.
So
I'll let you go on with the demo. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, so here's my build information. I have all the information about the artifact that I just uploaded to my Artifactory, so I can see the jar very quickly. So here I can see the full tree and the artifact in the exact location. So in that case, I use Maven, so I have my Maven repository with all the version that I have here. I'm sorry it's a bit slow, but in a minute you can see the sources, and here's my jar with all of the information that I need about my build. So for example, I have some properties that I added here, like the build name and the build number and the project if I want, and the timestamp. And with the build information, I can also scan it on my X-ray, which is vulnerability detection. So I can easily see if I have any vulnerable and if I really want to release it. So let's go back to the demo Maven and take it here. So here I can see the X-ray data, and I can see the environment variable that I just used in this build. So for example, if I want to investigate why one build running on a specific server and we have issues on the second one, I can easily try to define and create some diff between the environment variables and where exactly it ran, like some properties that I'm adding to the build. And very powerful tool here is the build info.json, which is basically a very large JSON file with all of the information about my build, like we saw is the environment variable and the X-ray information and much more. And in that case, I can easily create some queries to check, for example, when it's running, who ran it, what was the just server that ran there, and what I tried to achieve. So here, for example, I have the pool name, and I have the namespace and everything that I want to know about this build. So I try to make it quickly, and for conclusion, let's talk a bit about some questions that you may have, and I hope I try to make it some order with everything that's related to CICD. So CICD for my opinion, is a combination of methodology and tooling with the goal of increasing your speed and efficiency as a developer by automating tasks like building, testing, and deployment. So that you can do all of those things more often. The benefits for you, it's more frequent software releases, earlier detection of bugs, and bad releases, making it production less often. So there are several tools out there, that can help you to accomplish this goal, from our Artifactory platform, which is free, and to other tools like GitHub Actions, for example, or Circle CI to enterprise scale tool with additional features like we have in our pipelines in the Enterprise Edition. And I hope it helped to understand what is CICD and what it does for you. If you're still confused, that's okay too. It's totally fine, and it may take some time, to learn it. And it could find kind of a big problem for some of you, and it's still in flux. But please feel free to get in touch in Twitter or just in LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever you prefer. If you have any questions, I really love to help. And I hope to see you soon in our next webinar. I hope you like it. Sure, so let's see. We have here some issues about the sound. I'm sorry for that. And let's read some questions. So I see here, Failu, I saw you in the beginning, and thank you for your question. You asked if DevOps is just a culture. So I don't think it's just a culture. I think it's kind of a combination. As I said, I think it's methodologies and culture and tools and everything together. It's really hard to say what exactly it's DevOps. And let's see what else we have here. For CI, when multiple codes and commits from multiple developers happen throughout the day, is there a particular branching strategy that makes this easier? Wow, that's a hard question. So I think it's really depends on your organization and needs, and it's changing every time. And you just need to find the tool that works to your organization. And here, let's go to the second question. What if recommend a starting point for one who wants to better understand CI/CD methodology? First of all, just try. Just play with it. I really love, just to install new version and new software, just to try to investigate it and try to see the difference between different companies and different software, and find the software that do exactly what you want to have in your tools. So I think that first of all, just download any CI/CD that you want, or start with a platform that contains everything together, so you can just play with it a bit and see how it's working. And here I see another question from Marvis that asks, what does CI/CD mean? So I see that Lakshmi answered very, very nice. So CI is continuous integration and CD continuous deployment or continuous delivery for me. And here are some links that you can read about it. How to set up runners, Paco asked about it. So Paco, it really depends on the CI/CD tool that you're using. Sometimes runner can run on the cloud and sometimes runner will run on your self-hosted. It depends on the CI/CD tool that you're running. If you want, just send me an email with your CI/CD information, and I would love to try to help. All right, let's go to our last questions. Are all these tools features also available for on-prem? So yes, of course. For example, if we're talking about the JFrog platform, you have it available on on-prem. You can easily download it and install it on your server and just play with it a bit. I think that there is also an open source version or trial, so you can just try to play with it a bit. All right, Lior, and one question. Sorry, let's take the last one. It's yours. What are the challenges you encounter on a daily basis? Wow, there is a lot. So when I was part of the support team and the HTS team, I saw a lot of people, that's having some issues, even with the simple stuff of simple configuration. And, trying to moving from one CI/CD to another, it could be very, very challenging to try to change everything that you already know to a different server. Sometimes even the moving for YAMLs was a bit challenging. Some of the people really love YAMLs like me, but some of them really hate it, all the spaces and stuff. And sometimes, it could be even harder, like it's less frequent today because a lot of people using the cloud. But even the moving for the cloud is very, very hard for a lot of companies, right? And thank you for asking. And again, thank you very, very much for joining today. It was really a pleasure to be here today. And again, I'm sorry for the internet issues. I hope you like it and keep in touch.
Great. Thank you so much, Patel, for this great presentation, for answering all these questions. Big thanks to our colleague, Lakshmi from support, who was answering your questions during the session. As we mentioned in the beginning, the recording will be shared. The recording and the slides will be shared via email with you tomorrow. If you have any additional questions, you can reach out to Patel directly or at webinars@jfrog.com. If you would like a more personalized one-on-one session, you can click the link to book a technical session with JFrog that you see on the right of your screen. And with that, that is it from us for today. Thank you once again for spending this hour with us, and we hope to hear from you soon. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you, guys.